Ladies and gentlemen, independent Americans around the country and around the world, we are deep in the dog days of summer. We're going to continue to bring the heat, but we're also going to bring light to contrast the heat and have a returning champion who always brings light, who always brings insight, who always brings inspiration. The single favorite guest speaker of my class at Amherst in the entire semester, my good friend and a true American hero, the great and powerful Colonel Amy Mcgrath, is back on Independent Americans. Finally, welcome back.
Hey, that's just about the best intro. I think that was awesome. Thank you.
You deserve it, especially because you've been hauling ass and you left Kentucky and you're in a DC hotel room for like, what, 20 hours?
24. Yeah. Yeah, but I think it's less than 24 hours. Yes. I got 3 kids at home and I can't leave them for very long.
I mean, that's one of the many reasons you inspire me, is because you do all that you do with 3 kids and you're an awesome mom. So a lot I want to get to: Trump indictment, Senator Redneck, DeSantis. Want to get your thoughts on no labels. But can I ask you like a straight up question as a friend, as an admirer? You're a really inspiring leader. How do you do it all? How do you do it all? 3 kids, flying to DC, you're on MSNBC, you're doing all these things. How do you do it all?
Paul, I don't think I do it all. I think, I've always been pretty good at juggling. When people ask me, what do you need to be a fighter pilot, a pilot? And I was, do you have to be smart? And I'm like, no, not really. Yeah. Do you have to have good grades? Yeah, eventually. But what you really got to do is be somebody that can juggle a lot and just do a lot of stuff and kind of keep the balls moving. And that's what I do now, and that's how we do it. But at times, you're stopped, whether it's an issue with your back, which I had right after my Senate campaign. I ended up in the hospital because I had a back issue. Boy, I tell you what, that'll stop you in your tracks, but then once you get back going again, you're out there. It's what keeps you going. And I enjoy it. I enjoy being on TV. I enjoy talking about the things that matter, but I also enjoy tossing baseball with my 10-year-old. And so I try to make time for it all.
I love it. I hauled ass from football camp to come down here where my kid learned how to punt today. So we're doing real basic stuff. I don't want to neglect asking you, because it's been a year. Can't believe it's been a year. You and I talk all the time. We're on MSNBC together all the time. So now we can kind of we love Nicole, but we can take Nicole out of the middle and you and I can have a straight conversation. But can you tell folks, where are you and how are you?
Sure. Well, I'm still located in Kentucky. Doing very well. The kids are doing well, family's doing well. What I work on, I still work in politics behind the scenes. That's sort of my primary thing. And I hope we get a chance to discuss that. I'm working on a new project dealing with national security and working it for the next cycle, which is really important because we have a big national security threat, and his name is Donald Trump. And we got to make sure that he doesn't get back in the White House. But I'm working on that. And I also teach at the University of Kentucky. I teach national security policy at the Patterson School. It's a graduate school. I really love doing that. And occasionally get on TV and get to talk about national security or the latest political antics that the clown caucus is pushing through in the Republican Party. So it's a fun, interesting time right now, but that's where I'm at.
And right now you're in DC just for a couple of hours, and then you're gonna turn and burn. You go in, you hit a bunch of events and do a bunch of meetings, and then you go back down to baseball. But you're there in the midst of all this. You and I have been talking a lot on TV about Trump as a national security threat. I think he's the #1 national security threat. I want to talk about the Confederate wing of the GOP in a second. But the top news right now is that there is another pending indictment facing Trump, and it's focused on January 6th. So I think this one, in addition to the classified documents one, is more about our national security and maybe the highest level of threat and risk. And you're in a unique position to unpack that. So just what are your reactions to this latest indictment specifically, Amy?
Well, my first reaction as an American is you always want justice to be served. If if he committed a crime, and it certainly looks that way, we should have justice in this country. Nobody is above the law. And so just as a basic American, I'm glad to see that happen. And I want to see it happen in a fair, reasonable way, just like you'd want with any American throughout history. Okay. Politically speaking, I don't think this is going to change the calculus of any Republican member of Congress, of any Republican really out there voting who is a Trump supporter already. Look, if 2 impeachments and 1 credible allegation conviction on sexual harassment doesn't change your mind, 37 indictments under the Espionage Act doesn't change your mind about this man. 1 potential, trying to overthrow a free and fair election. January 6th, the involvement in that, the cheering the guys on in January 6th, where they breached the Capitol for the first time since the War of 1812. If that doesn't change your mind, another indictment ain't gonna change your mind. Mm. Donald Trump has to be defeated politically in the ballot box. That's the only way that these Republican members of Congress and his supporters and the people that are backing him are going to quit on him. That's the only way, nothing else. And that's just Amy's opinion. That's why it's so important to make sure he doesn't win.
Amy, you're a very independent-minded Democrat. You ran as a Democrat in deep red Kentucky. You said to me once that if Jesus Christ ran as a Democrat, he probably wouldn't win in Kentucky. We're going to talk in a second about the senator from Alabama and what those attacks coming from him are doing to our military and our women in uniform in particular. But as a voice of reason in the Democratic Party, as a rare voice on national security in a place like MSNBC, can you talk about what it feels like in Kentucky, where Trump's getting indicted? You've got Tommy Tuberville, who gets support in Alabama for what is a pretty radical agenda. If you were going to advise not just the Democratic Party, but independents and anybody politically about what will resonate in Kentucky, can you take us inside there from your viewpoint, please?
Well, I think what always resonates with voters is to say that our military should never be used as a political pawn. I don't care what side of the aisle you're at. And the fact of the matter is, and this isn't just because I'm a Democrat, right? My husband's a Republican, but the fact of the matter is, it's really only the Republican Party and members of the Republican Party right now using the military as a political pawn. I mean, you and I, Paul, we might have an informed disagreement about the Pentagon abortion policy. We might have a disagreement about that policy. Okay, whether you should be able to pay a servicewoman to go get her health care elsewhere because she can't get it in Alabama or not, that's fine. Let's have that debate. But you shouldn't hold up 400 plus generals, admirals, in high level important positions, hurting themselves, hurting their families, hurting their unit, and ultimately hurting our national security because you don't get your way. That's the problem I have. And I think everyday voters do get that. And if it's explained in that way.
Can you talk about, there's a divide now that's deepening between southern states and the North, right? In urban areas and rural areas, white and black. There's a lot of divisions that feel like we're going backward in many ways. And Tuberville, who I've called Senator Redneck, is now, the self-appointed and now, I guess, supported by others, leader of this movement that I've said feels like he's trying to bring the military back to the Confederacy. And he's supporting white nationalists in his commentary. He's given Southerners a really bad name. He's like Foghorn Leghorn, right? Like he is like the stereotypical old racist white guy from the South. Can you talk about what that means for the South? I mean, there's a new South, right? I mean, especially with places like Lexington and Nashville and others that are growing so rapidly, and the politics are changing in places like Georgia. Can you talk about that? Because I think people view him as stereotypically Southern, and they might not view you as the same.
Well, I think that you're going to have some folks who may rally behind him because they just want to feel like, hey, you're attacking a Southerner and I'm a Southerner kind of thing. But I do think there's a growing number of people, particularly young people, who, you know, are tired of this. They don't want to be labeled as, you know, we're in the South and we're backwards at all. And it's not just from Senator Tuberville. You're right to talk about the white nationalism, and that's just it's terrible, and it's just so shocking still in America that you would have people rally behind that and say, hey, you know, go for it, Senator Tuberville. You know, I mean, that's insane. But it's also, and this is what gets me more recently, it's not just Senator Tuberville, but, you know, Senator Cotton, Tom Cotton, who just the other day said that, you know, women in the military were somehow engaging in abortion tourism. You know, I mean, what a slap in the face to every woman who's ever served. It's just this constant, like, wow, we really going after women in the military now? That's our campaign? You know, that's our lane? We're gonna you know, SHIT on women in the military? And apparently the answer is yes. And to me, that's kind of shocking. I don't think it's going to be great for them in the long term. But I do think that, unfortunately, Paul, you do get some people who, you know, they may have already had a bias, and they kind of go along with some of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's become popularized. You know, you've got the Freedom Caucus, you've got Marjorie Taylor Greene, you've got Matt Gaetz, you've got Ronnie Jackson, you've got people that are right out of central casting from like a Ku Klux Klan recruiting video, right? I mean, it really is. That's how it looks like, especially to, I think, people from the West or from the North, people who haven't spent time in the South. Like I've spent a lot of time in Georgia and Alabama and all across the South. And I think that it hurts me because I know it's a stereotype, and it's a stereotype that the South has been fighting to overcome, but right now they're embracing it, and it's fuel injected by Trump. And I want to take it to a specific item that you and I have talked about a lot on MSNBC and in other places, but I want to drill down on it. This abortion fight within the military right now, right? Where Senator Redneck, and I'm going to keep calling him that, basically says, if you are raped, if you're an active duty service member and you are raped by your superior, you cannot seek abortion related care. That I want to put a point on it. If you're a child of a service member who is raped in a criminal act by an assault, you know, you can't go and get abortion related services. That's like how severe this is. If it is a fighter pilot, a female fighter pilot who is raped and assaulted, she cannot go get care. You've personalized this in a really brave and powerful way. Can you build on that in a way that I can't, because it doesn't, you know, impact me the same way?
Yeah. So it's not just those folks who are women who are sexually assaulted. And I know that's a super important piece to talk about. But I'm going to bring another idea behind this. Say you're a woman in the military who does a high profile job, and you have spent years, literally years, training. You've been gone for a decade. You finally get together with your spouse after being years apart. You've both done multiple combat tours. You finally get together, and now you're co-located, and you're in your what you call B billet. Some people call it shore tour. You know what that is? That's the time when you have 2 or 3 years where you can be together and you're not going to deploy. Guess what? You want to have a kid. You know, you're in your early 30s, and you find out, you know, you're pregnant, but you find out that pregnancy is there's a real problem. And you have this just heartbreaking problem where, you know, if you don't terminate the pregnancy, your life may be in risk, and you may never be able to have children. And this child that you know you have right now that you're pregnant with is never going to survive. And so now what Tommy Tuberville is saying is, you don't get a choice. You don't get to travel anywhere else. You're going to put your life at risk. We know better than you. You know, what a slap in the face to somebody who has deployed, who wants to have children. This is her only time to do it. And now she's stationed at the Air War College in Alabama. And he doesn't want to give her and her spouse any choice. He wants to be involved in that. Yep. And that's the kind of thing that, like, you know, when John Kirby, who's at the National Security at the White House talking about this issue, says it's about the dignity of our troops. It's about the dignity. It's about, you know, taking care of women in the military who risked, you know, their lives for us. That's what this is about. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it is personal. It is very personal to me.
I'm really grateful for how you shared that from your viewpoint, and on behalf of so many people in uniform who can't speak out right now. It is personal, it is moral, it is an insult. And then there's also, you know, the practical national security implications of the fact that that woman would also be off the line for a while, right? Like she's out of action. She can't perform her duties. And she's going to tell her friends, hey, this is what happens if you join the military. So her friends who are thinking about graduating college and joining the military, and especially if they're leaving a place like California or New York, which I think makes up something like 20% of the women who are recruited into the military, it's going to impact recruiting. It's going to impact retention. It's going to impact readiness. And now it's ginned up this right-wing energy in the GOP to the point where it's now DeSantis's platform. Like he is struggling in the polls. And now he's saying, I'm going to make this a priority for my entire administration to rip the woke out of the military. That's what he said yesterday in this press conference in South Carolina. And he's trying to say, I was in the military, so I know, right? As a JAG, he was a male JAG, and he thinks he knows about this. But can you just react to, I guess, the political impact of that? I mean, obviously, it drives away independents like me in droves. Obviously, it drives away Democrats. But what do you think the significance is of, you know, the second ranked GOP candidate making his platform focused on attacking our military? This used to be the party of John McCain, of George Bush, of Bob Dole. What's your take on that?
Well, I think number one, this is just another example why the Republican Party is no longer the party of national security. It's no longer the party of the military. You name it, you know, they've got 100 different reasons why. This is just another one. You know, this may work well with the base. It's not going to work well in a general election, attacking the military, attacking the diversity of our military, which frankly is one of the best things about our military. I mean, it literally makes our military so powerful and so effective. I mean, people who aren't in the military have to know how awesome that is. I've been all around the world. I have worked with partners and allies and different militaries. There's hardly any military like ours. And you know what? We are gosh darn good at what we do. You know, the funny thing about the whole wokeism in the military thing that DeSantis and the Republicans talk about, it's amazing to me as somebody that watches military current events and that sort of thing. That the moment, like, the military was great all the way up until the moment Joe Biden took the office of commander-in-chief. It was almost like at 12 o'clock that afternoon, all of a sudden the military became woke. Now we have a Republican president or a Democratic president. All of a sudden the military is weak. And as soon as we get a Republican president again, all of a sudden the military turns back as being strong. It's such BS. And the whole point of going after diversity and the people in the Pentagon who I know who are sharp, smart people who want to just do what's right and get the best people in our military and work in the diversity and inclusion areas of the Pentagon. You know what that's all about? That's about leadership. It's called Leadership 101. You and I learned that from day one in officer training. You know, it's know your people, get the best out of them that you possibly can, know your mission. And every study out there shows that a more diverse unit, boardroom, you name it, force is actually a more effective force. And so we're just doing right. And the last thing I'll say, and then I'll shut up, is there is a reason why the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Roberts, you know, when he struck down affirmative action, they struck it down for affirmative action, except for the military academies. Why? Because they know that diversity matters. It's a matter of national security. We got to have a diverse force because you want that to reflect society, and the leadership has to reflect the people that they lead. It's basic leadership 101.
I don't want you to ever shut up. And I think you're right on the money. And there's also, I'm always going to try to pull out a practical component that doesn't get pulled out enough. When you have diverse people, they speak more languages. That's useful on the battlefield. When you have women, they can do things that man can't. Like when we were in the Middle East, they can search women for bombs, right? Like in some Middle Eastern cultures, they would not let men put their hands on women. So we had lioness units, right? That would go in and search women under their clothes for suicide bombs. Like those are the practical applications that a diverse military brings that I don't think are being pulled out enough. So I don't know who Tom Cotton and Tubby Tuberville think we're going to fight unless they think we're fighting the North in 1865. But you have to know the enemy. You have to have a diverse force because it also makes you more effective on the battlefield. Well, let me ask you, and I got to let you go, about another diverse issue, sort of, the diversity of our political dialogue. You know, this is Independent Americans. You and I have partnered on Operation Liberty. We work together on the board at IABA. We don't have many differences politically, except really for our party affiliations. But now there's this new effort called No Labels. We had Joe Lieberman on last week. I've been skeptical, and it seems like No Labels is more hated by Democrats than anybody since like Andrew Yang or Tulsi Gabbard. I'm trying to think of like who it was that was more hated.
Doesn't go as low as Tulsi.
Right? But what's your take here? I mean, I'm skeptical for a number of reasons. They don't have any real independence. They're not supporting real independence. You know, we don't know who their candidates are going to be. There's the dark money issue. There's a lot of issues here, but I understand, you know, structurally how there could be an advantage. But what's your take as a Democrat and as a moderate Democrat that, you know, I always hope will become independent?
Well, so a couple of things. One, I hope someday our country gets to the point where we have more than two major parties. I mean, I think there's a lot of people like yourself, and I met them on the campaign trail, that just hate both sides. They just hate both parties. They want an alternative. I get that. Now is not that time. And I say now is not that time because we have the greatest national security threat to our country, and that is Donald Trump and his followers. That, you know, it's very clear that they basically want to dismantle, you know, the government as we know it, and just put in people that, you know, will help him get to, you know, an authoritarian state, essentially. And I'm very worried about that. So I don't think now is the time. I also believe that No Labels, you know, it presents itself as sort of this middle ground. Well, Joe Biden's pretty darn moderate. I mean, look at who Joe Biden ran against in the Democratic primary in 2020. Seriously? He was like the most moderate candidate and he won. And guess what? Democrats are for that. They like that, you know? I'm a more moderate myself, but you know, this business of Democrats wanting to or going further left, I actually don't buy it. There's never been a purple district in this country that has been won by a far left candidate on the Democratic side. It's always a more moderate candidate because that's where the electorate's at. That's what the data shows. So Joe Biden is that middle guy. And so to say that we're gonna put somebody else in there, I don't see that. I don't see a path.
I think that's really smart. And it's something that I've wanted to pull apart too, because I think they're conflating a lot of things. The Democratic brand, right, I think has definitely moved left with the rise of AOC and others, right? And you could argue that Biden's been pulled to the left, but Biden is by far the most moderate, you know, high profile person in the Democratic Party. I think, you know, if Biden's off the board, someone like Pete Buttigieg, someone like you, someone like Pat Ryan, you know, can inherit that kind of moderate mantle. But I do think this is an important point you're bringing up. And I think what they're not saying that really independents have a lot of problems with. I don't think they have so much of a problem with Biden's moderation. I think they're worried he's going to die. I think they're worried he's going to die. And Kamala Harris, who is left of center, more left than Biden, some would argue, I would argue not that moderate, that she will be the nominee. So I wonder if part of their calculation, because they won't speak out loud about a lot of their calculations, is they're keeping this insurance policy in case something happens to Biden, he gets sick, he dies, he's off the board, and the Democrats in the last minute have no other alternative except Kamala Harris. Or it becomes a feeding frenzy and it's Bernie Sanders or someone else against Trump. I mean, do you have reactions to that prospect? Well, and also, like, yourself as a Democrat, if it's Kamala Harris, it's a very different equation here, right?
Well, I don't really know. I mean, I feel like the Biden-Harris administration has been the Biden-Harris administration, and Kamala may be different, but they're still running on the same platform, and I'm not so worried about it. I think the idea that people want more choice. How many guys are running on the Republican side right now? If you want more choice, go pick one of them. But because they're all crazy. But there you go. And the other problem I have about no labels is the transparency thing. Mm-hmm. In the age of dark money, you're gonna sink all of that money into this idea. Who is paying for it? Because you're not getting it from grassroots donors. I can tell you that right now. You're getting some people that may be, duped by this. But somebody is funding it. And the fact that they won't tell you who that is, I think is very worrisome to me.
I've said this many times before on the show, and I think you represent, I think the truly independent, the most authentically independent people in this country are former military. And we've had folks on this show like Admiral Mullen, like Admiral Stavridis, like Mark Hertling, a lot of people that have never had a side politically. You're a person that was politically agnostic for most of your career until you picked a side. And I think if there was a strong, authentically independent organization or movement or even candidate, if no labels or anyone was running out and saying, hey, we're running Admiral Stavridis, right? This would be, or McCraven, there are other examples. Then it wouldn't just be an academic exercise. It wouldn't be hypothetical. It would be actual. And I think that still remains the real opportunity. And it's one that you also represent. People respond to you because they feel like you put country above party. I wish you were in charge of the Democratic Party in the interest of the country more than anyone else. I'm going to ask you to stick around for a couple of questions for our Patreon members. Thank you to them for making this happen. Amy, any last thoughts as we go into summer? People are a little bit frustrated. Maybe people are exhausted. I know you and I get exhausted doing this kind of work. You gave the best pep talk ever to my class at Amherst. Do you have a message for the country when they're feeling tired and beat up?
Yeah. Number one, I would say, do take a break. Don't do this all the time. I mean, I take a break too. Why? Because we need you long-term to stay engaged. This country needs you. This country needs informed, dedicated patriots to stay engaged. And when it comes time for election season, which is so important to our country, stay engaged and be a part of it. That's what I'm working on, a project that I think is going to matter. You're working on a project that I think is going to matter. Find that project and get behind it, whether it's financially or with spreading the word on social media or whatever. But do not give up on our country. We can't afford it. We cannot afford it. So don't check out for too long. Go to the beach for a little bit, cool, and then come back in, do your part for this country.
There you have it, folks. The great and powerful Colonel Amy Mcgrath. I wish you were running for president. I think if no labels stop talking about Joe Manchin and start talking about you, I think they'd have a totally different reaction. But in the meantime, I'm grateful for your friendship, your leadership, your example. You're somebody that all of us can look up to and be inspired by, and especially our kids, all the kids out there that are looking for a role model. Football players and all that are nice, but Amy Mcgrath is the real deal. So thank you for all that. Enjoy the swamp. I'm glad I'm not there. And until next time, my friend, I'll see you on TV and stay vigilant.
Sounds good.